Hey, this is Michael Sansolo, and this week we're doing Sansolo Speaks by speaking. And I wanted to talk with you this week to follow up on something Kevin wrote about last week. Actually, he did a video about that I thought was so useful and so important. And it was the notion of surprise and delight when we do something for our customers that just make them say, wow, stop the day and take them to a new place. In fact, if you remember, this is exactly what the great online shoe company Zappos, this was the key to their sales strategy that built them to such strength. And as I thought about surprise and delight, I realized something had happened to me recently. So I'm going to do a two-part video here, an indoor and an outdoor. For the indoor part, one day last week, there's this local Italian restaurant that my wife and I go to frequently, pick up pizza, pick up some other Italian food. And I had gone there to get some food, and about 2 days after we get and have obviously consumed the food, I get a call from the restaurant. It's the owner of the restaurant, and I'm thinking, oh, I did something wrong. I gave the wrong credit card. Lord knows what I did. Nothing of the sort. The guy called me because he wanted to thank me for being a loyal customer. He said, you know, loyal customers matter, especially in COVID time when restaurants are struggling. And I thought about what this guy did, and frankly, I don't know if I was his only call that day, one of 5, one of 50, one of 500. But what he did was actually pretty easy. After all, I had called in my order, they had my phone number, they had my order, so it was easy to reach out to me. But by giving me that moment, it was, in Kevin's words, surprise and delight. He made me feel important, and frankly, he guaranteed that I'll be going back to order more food from him. And as I thought about it, a lot of the retailers who listen and watch and read Morning Newsbeat could do the exact same thing. It doesn't have to be a monumental task. You don't have to call 5,000 people a day, but you could call 5 or 10. You could have different department managers in stores. Just pick up the phone. We get a lot of information from the consumer these days, and this would be a way of showing that we're using the information to thank you, to surprise and delight you, to use Kevin's words. Now, as we all know, not every surprise is a delight. And there's a reason I came outside and I want to do this little piece on surprise and not so delight from nature. I'm out in my backyard right now, and it's kind of a normal suburban backyard, not very big, but really nice. But I happen to live in a place that is about to have a real wow moment. And wow is not always a good thing. Here's the deal. I live in the Maryland suburbs of Washington, D.C. And unless you live around me, you have no idea what I'm about to tell you. We are ground zero for something called Brood X. Brood X is a group of 17-year, they emerge every 17 years, cicadas. If you've never seen a cicada, they're about 3 inches long. They look like prehistoric dragonflies. They're not harmful in any way, but they are annoying as all get up. They make so much noise. What happens is every 17 years, they emerge from the ground. They have a couple weeks to live. They're not very, very long living. They basically have to make a lot of noise to attract a mate. Then they have to do, doing what comes naturally to a cicada to produce the eggs that will be buried under the ground. So 17 years later, we'll get Brood X again. But here's what makes Brood X, here's the surprise. The local scientists are telling us that Brood X will basically produce enough cicadas that we will have 1.5 million cicadas, 1.5 million per acre. Now, I've done the math on my property here, and I am looking at an invasion around my home of 350,000 cicadas, which means in a couple weeks, if I come out here, I won't be able to do a taping like this because it's supposed to sound like there are lawnmowers all around me, and frankly, there are going to be cicadas all around me. Here's the key to these cicadas, though. They have no natural defenses. And by the way, other than skeeving you out when they land on you, they really are not very harmful. What the cicada population does is because they cannot defend themselves from birds or other creatures, they overwhelm them with numbers. So when 1.5 million come out per acre, and again, it's acre after acre after acre, what happens is birds and other animals start eating them, and they eat so many of them, they in essence go into food coma. They can't eat anymore, and that is their defense. And it's interesting, because when I was telling this to Kevin, who thought it was kind of creepy that this is going to happen here, he came up with the great analogy for business lessons. Our industry is loaded with really good independent operators, but those independents are constantly up against some very large companies, and frankly, they've got some troubles when they compete because the buying power, the economies of scale of a large company are different than a small independent. But that's why independents have to look for their strength in numbers. They have to do things like join share groups. They have to join associations. Even working with their wholesalers, they have to be part of ad groups so they can get the power of size. You know, one of the quotes I have heard for years is there are no independent operators. There are only interdependent operators because they're interdependent with their wholesalers, with their fellow independents. So the lesson from all these millions of cicadas about to arrive in my neighborhood this year is sometimes there can be strength in numbers. You don't have to be the strongest or the most powerful, but you got to think differently. And that's apparently what cicadas do, and that's why they get to come back every 17 years, and God knows how long that's been going on. Well, anyhow, that's what's on my mind this week. And again, to quote Kevin, we always want to hear what's on your mind.